Hello and welcome to the Realm of Unknown. I'm your host Shane, and today's episode is the winner of the March poll, whose theme was surrounding recent UFO sightings, and more specifically, this marks the first UFO-centric episode here on the podcast, so it's something interesting and something unique. We've discussed them a bit in the past when it comes to previous episodes, however, they never really drove the main discussion that we were having. So today is today's, very first UFO centric. We will be discussing the O'Hare International Airport incident that took place in 2006. Again, this was voted on the March poll, which if you want to participate in, you can do so by going over and checking out the Patreon. The April poll is currently up and will currently stay up until the end of the month. And the episode will come out the following month, like this one has, and the February one before that. So, without further ado, let us begin. At around 4:30 p.m. on November 7th, 2006, several reports of a flying saucer-like object were delivered to federal authorities within Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. The object itself was spotted hovering over the Concourse C of the United Terminal, specifically over Gate C-17. The strange object was spotted by several individuals, including a group of 12 airport employees, ranging anywhere from pilots to even management from the airline. The rest of the reports that came in were either offhand pedestrians or travelers who were just eyewitnesses in and outside of the airport. Witnesses say that the object was dark gray in color and had a metallic nature to it, reporting that its size was anywhere between 6 to 24 feet in diameter and was spotted hovering for relatively 5 minutes. Some say that it appeared to be a spinning frisbee-like shape, with others saying pretty much the complete opposite, that this object was not rotating at all. However, despite all these discrepancies, all of the eyewitnesses did agree that the object was completely silent, and that it just suddenly appeared above the 1,900-foot cloud deck. All of this and all the sightings remained true until it suddenly shot off into the clouds, leaving behind a cylindrical hole that just pretty much bore through the clouds themselves. Some reports even say that the hole in the cloud closed up rather quickly after the object created it, which is strange in its own right. The first to spot the hovering object was a ramp employee who had been pushing back United Airlines Flight 446. Upon noticing the strange sighting, this employee quickly notified others who worked on the flight. The word ultimately got up to a manager who actually left his office in haste in order to spot the commotion. They are then quoted as saying the following: "I knew no one would make a false call like that, but if someone was bouncing a weather balloon or something else over O'Hare, we had to stop it because it was in very close proximity to our flight operations. So regardless of what this was, it was a danger if it was there." Eventually, news outlets began to pick up the story, and they really rode home with it, sparking people's beliefs that this may have actually been some sort of UFO that was lingering above the airport. That being said, the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as the airline itself, they pretty much refused to investigate the incident. This was until the Chicago Tribune, who was investigating the report themselves, filed a Freedom of Information Act request against the FAA in order to know more of what was going on. Only after this request did the FAA actually request an order for an internal review of the air traffic communication tapes. And it's because of this that we actually do know of the communication between a United supervisor and an FAA manager from within the airport towers concerning the sighting itself. Ultimately, though, the FAA dismissed the incident as simply being a weather phenomena of sorts. A Dr. Mark Hammergreen, an astronomer at the Adler Planetarium, he also agreed with this conclusion of the FAA's, going as far as saying that the weather condition at O'Hare on that specific day was just perfect for what is known as a hole punch cloud. Dr. Hammergreen is quoted as saying the following in the report from the Tribune. It's something that occurs when a propeller or jet airplane passes through when you have a uniform cloud cover, while the temperature is right near the freezing point. They make liquid air droplets freeze, and a hazy disk of ice crystals descends from the hole, and it looks as though a perfect hole was punched into the cloud. This conclusion that the object was nothing more than a weather phenomena is actually further supported by the fact that there was no air traffic control workers that spotted the objects themselves, and it's their job to watch and monitor the skies in and around the airport, so it's odd. Furthermore, no miscellaneous object actually showed up on radars at all that day, so there's no real concrete evidence to this report aside from the eyewitness testimonies. UFO investigators, however, they sort of see this in a different light. They have argued that the FAA's refusal to look further into the incident contradicts the agency's mandate to investigate possible security breaches. And this is just in relation to American airports in general, which this essentially is with this case. An object, regardless of what it really is, was witnessed by numerous airport employees and was even officially reported by at least one of them. It remains there, hovering in plain sight during rush hour above one of the busiest airports in the entire world. That in and of itself should have some substance. Mark Rudiger, the scientific director at the Center of the UFO Studies, is quoted as saying the following to the Tribune, emphasizing his own concern over the handling of the case. It is an unknown object over O'Hare, and it's seen by official personnel. And does United or the FAA take it seriously? Of course not. They have zero interest because UFOs couldn't possibly exist. But how can you not worry about something hovering over an airport after 9/11? It just doesn't make any sense. The National Aviation Reporting Center of Anomalous Phenomena even came forward and published their own 155-page report of the sighting. It called for a government inquiry as well as an improvement to energy sensing technologies. The report reflected a very similar stance to that of Mark Rudiger and the Center of UFO Studies, and a quote from the report itself states the following. Anytime an airborne object can hover for several minutes over a busy airport but not be registered on radar or seen visibly from the control tower constitutes a potential threat to flight safety. Ultimately, the most coverage that this incident got was actually from the news outlets such as CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and other outlets such as the Chicago Tribune and NPR. Heck, even in 2009, the History Channel picked up the story with its own show, UFO Hunters, although obviously the coverage there was more for entertainment and had a bit of a bias when they were going into it. There were supposedly photos and even videos of the incident that exist out there. However, the video itself was removed from YouTube, and all of them only come out years after the case. Most come from anonymous individuals claiming to have been witnesses of the event. However, I just don't want to come forward for some reason, just from a multitude of reasons, pretty much. Furthermore, none of the photos are really all that credible nor clear. Most pop up on random blog sites and random coverages of the stories that may, come up years after the fact. I've looked over a few of them, and I have to say that they aren't really great. Obviously, if they really were taken in 2006 on an old phone or something, then I can get that the quality isn't going to be the best. But some of them are just so poor quality overall, except for the strange object, which is pretty much the most generic shape of a UFO. I'm talking like old school 1950s flying saucer type shape. The object itself always seems to be the clearest thing in the sky within these photos, but personally I don't think that this would have been the case. especially if on that day there was so much overcast. So just imagine like a gray object in the distance on a cloudy day taken on a relatively small, poor quality camera on a cell phone in 2006. That object is not going to be the clearest thing in the frames. That just shouldn't be the case. Personally, so that's personally why I don't believe that a lot of these photos and videos that come up are all that credible, and I think that some of them have some modifications to some degree. But that's really it when it comes to this incident itself. Government investigation and even insight from the airline itself really dried up shortly after the original media craze. Aside from, the random pop-up photos and claims that coincide with blog posts and articles, pretty much banking on the incident itself, nothing new has really come of this. Now, reports of strange objects hovering over airports, that's a different story. That seems to be something that sort of happens from time to time, pretty much all over the globe. Most of the time, however, they share a rather similar conclusion to this particular case, being chalked up to a weather phenomena or extremely rare event that just sort of happens to fool the eye. But, perhaps a few of them are actually some form of UFO, and they are, observing our airports. Whether this is an extraterrestrial who's visiting Earth, or just perhaps some outside government or group spying on others, it's certainly something to keep your eye out on for when you travel by air, but ultimately it's not something that I think is so overtly credible that you should be focusing too heavily on. But that's, like I said, pretty much most of the coverage for the O'Hare International Airport incident. Again, this took place in 2006, so it's a few years back, but the overall theme of this month's episode was supposed to be relatively recent and in past year UFO sightings. Ones that were big enough and got enough coverage to warrant this sort of investigation. And O'Hare won. So again, if you guys do want to take part in these sort of polls and participate to this sort of level, then you can do so over on the Patreon. It's Realm of Unknown. And if you want to stay up to date on the schedules and updates on the topics and such like that, you could do so over on Twitter and Instagram at Realm of Unknown. But again, that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys did enjoy, and I hope to see you guys next week. Remember to stay spooky.